Hey everyone, what up? Matt Kaiser here. Now, Soulslikes. You know what they are? I know what they are. Ever since they originated back with the original Dark Souls, being made by From Software.
It's just like Dark Souls! It is just like Dark Souls! Just like Dark Souls!
And ever since then, they recently dominated the gaming market, with of course the Soulsborne genre, with titles such as Bloodborne, Sekiro, and of course Elden Ring. Though other developers had a recent crack at the whole genre of making their own Souls game, with one in particular having their very own recent track record, which of course leads us to Koei Tecmo's Team Ninja, which are known for making action games or even fighting games such as the Ninja Gaiden series as well as the Dead or Alive series. There, I said it. You happy now, Colin? But they've also had a knack of making Souls games of their own, with things like the new Neo duology, as well as the recent rise of the Ronin. Oh, and they may have also collabed with Square Enix to make Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, and that was,
bullshit. I don't give a fuck who you.
Yeah. But amongst those titles, there's also a recent new entry in the whole Koei Tecmo Team Ninja Souls games that recently, was kind of under the radar, even though on concept was pretty much a cool combo for both Koei Tecmo in general, and that of course being, Wo Long Fallen Dynasty, a Souls-like action RPG being produced by Team Ninja's Fumihiko Yasuda, as well as producer of Bloodborne himself, Masaki Yamigawa. I hope I'm not butchering that. This was released for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and PC on March 3rd, 2023, and it had fairly positive reviews, and it sold 1 million by a month at least. This one was more centered on a new dark fantasy tale set on the Three Kingdoms, a historic event that even Koei Tecmo themselves capitalize on, with things of course like the Romance of the Three Kingdoms series, as well as of course the Dynasty Warriors franchise. This game would also get 3 new expansions in the forms of, free expansions, as well as also even collab items including weapons and armor kit from games like Neo 2, Naraka Blade Point, and even Lies of P. However, in February 7th this year, this game would also get a re-release, known as Wo Long Complete Edition, and it comprises itself of mainly the base game, as well as all the DLC included into one package, especially the aforementioned expansions and collab items, thus making it completely the definitive version to play this game on. And I'll be of course reviewing the PS5 version of this, and once again, special thanks to Koei Tecmo Europe for allowing me to get a review code. It was an absolute honor, as I'm going to look into this game and see, potentially, if this is actually a decent way into getting to the Souls-like genre. Souls-like though, not Soulsborne. Let me make that perfectly clear. But before we begin, if you like what you're seeing here, then by all means, like the video, click the subscribe button if you're new, and hit that bell notification icon if you want more RPG content and reviews like this from yours truly. Not only that, but I'm also currently playing Persona 5 Royal, as you can see from this tweet here, and hopefully before this year ends, I'll be able to deliver my long-awaited 750 subscriber special of Persona 5 Royal, so please do look forward to that. And here with that said, let's slowly crawl to enemies, try not to pursue Lu Bu, and engage in battle for the Three Kingdoms, as we head straight into Wo Long Fallen Dynasty Complete Edition. So our story is set in the far end of the later Han Dynasty in China, with wars raging across the country, and our protagonist, who's us by the way, which is a nameless malicious soldier, heads to a village to fight back against the Yellow Turban Rebellion. There, they encounter a young man who gives them a shining jade amulet with the power to protect and heal the wearer, They also learn that warriors united by their bonds carry that same jade, which allows them to receive the protection of a divine beast. It's only till then they also meet a mysterious evil wizard named Yu-Ji, who plans to influence the War of the Three Kingdoms, using a corrupt magical drug known as the elixir that will spread across chaos throughout the land and corrupt anyone into demons. During their journey, the protagonists will encounter characters like Zhao Yun, as well as the sorceress Hong Jing, along with other famous warriors of the Three Kingdoms, and they become entangled into the vicious rivalry between warring factions, and with the hope of putting an end to the whole elixir curse once and for all. And that is the story, and I'm gonna be real here, the story isn't, well, good, as it mainly just boils down to your character being chosen to basically fight in the war and see many rival generals just being affected by it. Not only that, but the whole storytelling and pacing just goes a little bit too fast, where cutscenes just go very haphazardly, with a lot of things just happening without much time to either breathe or sink in, without, having so many things that are just borderline contrived, on how certain historic figures have to be turned into demonic abominations or whatnot. I kid you not, where in one scene in particular has one of the figures suddenly turned into a monster by a random generic NPC, at the snap of a finger I should even ask, and everyone has little time to react to it. It just comes across as both forced and nonsensical.
Well, that's just lazy writing.
Furthermore, the characters themselves, while it's nice to meet historic figures, and I'm sure either Three Kingdoms or Dynasty Warriors enthusiasts will get a kick out of seeing those characters, especially if some of them are their favorites in the game here, while they're pretty cool, even as someone who's never played these entries before, with the exception of course being, Fate Samurai Remnant, because Archer in that game is Zhao Yu. And they even threw a reference in that game as well. What is this? Some kind of Three Kingdoms cinematic universe? Then again, we did also have a crossover with Warrior All-Stars. Can we get a sequel, please? Anyway, back on track. Now, all of seeing those beloved characters is a cool aspect realistically. But to be honest, they don't get much spotlight in the story. And the only thing you get to know about them is mainly through these backstories and after bonding with them when you beat a certain boss. Not helped by the fact that a lot of them just don't have that good screen time. A lot of them just either fall into either just good or evil territory, and mostly just have one personality trait. Like Zhang Fi here, who's a bit of a jackass really, and others who are just either honorable. Some are fairly likable, but that's really kinda it. The only characters that really stood up and had some form of compelling arcs would have to be Hong Jing and of course, the mightiest of all men, Lu Bu.
It's Lu Bu!
Which by the way, don't pursue him. The former of course having probably the most amount of screen time out of the entire cast. Hell, she even has the most top billing over everyone in the credits. And her personal beliefs as well as the goals she has to aid with you. And also, she's very pretty. And the latter also have a connection and intriguing motivations at the very least, though I can't say too much without spoilers. It might be also because I played this with the English dub, and, well, it's the dub of all time here, as mainly you get line deliveries that sound either comical, probably due to the fact that it's either the material itself or the voice direction. Heck, I even noticed that a lot of these VAs are comprised of ones you see in either anime or games like, say, Honkai Star Rail or Genshin Impact. But the remaining ones come, say, from, for kids, which honestly took me by surprise. The ones that do give a fairly solid performance, in my opinion, would have to be Julia Gu as Hong Jing, Ryan Andes as Guan Yu, and Jason Griffith as Young Xiao.
To be the chief cause of the chaos that plagues the state.
Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald?
Just have to improvise. With your dying screams. Snooping as usual, I see. There's energy in me yet. Had I known you were capable of such fine work, Stockman, I would have treated you better.
So yeah, while there are some cool moments here and there and lots of nice references, especially this one moment here, which you can basically tell is a reference to Dynasty Warriors.
You went wrong. Hold back for now.
Do not pursue Lu.
But outside of that, the story may just exist to be a vehicle, and just to mainly get you to the next stage. And as I know, Team Ninja aren't the masterclasses of storytelling here. When it comes to the visuals for Wo Long, it's an area that I'm fairly mixed upon. Generally speaking, the art direction as well as the characters look fairly nice, with some really amazing designs, and the same can be said for the demons here, especially the bosses here, all of them looking like grotesque eldritch abominations. And the main cutscenes are fairly solid, for the most part. Some action scenes are pretty cool, but then there are some that just look, well, off. They just look really off. But as for the actual visuals, well, I know for sure that another forte with Team Ninja isn't that they're up to snuff with graphical fidelity, within some exceptions of course. A common complaint is that most of their Souls-like games don't entirely look graphically pleasing. Even their recent one with Rise of the Ronin, a PS5 exclusive title, being slammed for especially looking like a PS3 game. And yeah, this game isn't exactly the prettiest looking game either, as you do get some texture pop in, as well as some hair textures here that look a little bit jagged and rough. And even though this is a dark fantasy title, which can be justified, it means you do get some pretty dull looking environments, with lots of shades of dark purple, grey and black, and honestly, it makes the game sometimes visually boring to look at. Though thankfully, some environments and stages that do look beautiful, mainly whether it's the snowy areas or even the hidden village, and even some areas that where it just rains, look fairly alright. But I feel like that's mostly few and far between. Then we get to the performance. Now, like any other game, I obviously played this on the PS5 and I obviously set to performance mode, and for the most part it did run smooth at 60 frames per second. The only times I could actually see it falling apart is with lots of elemental attacks, or when a couple of enemies appear once they give the jump on you. The form of which, especially when you see multiple lightning attacks thrown at once. And yeah, it looks really jaggy. I can see that it's mainly due to the engine that they use not being either up to snuff or even entirely optimized. I am aware that neither of those games that they make are fully optimized either, regardless, even if you put it on next gen hardware, and I know for sure it's not great as well on PC. Will they have a chance to get a brand new engine that will be tailor-made for next gen, or find a way to improve upon their proprietary engine? Only time will tell. Now we get on to the meat of the game. So Wo Long is a Souls-like action RPG with real-time action combat, but has some interesting key elements that in my opinion stands out among the other Souls-likes out there. For starters, you have a normal attack, but unlike a lot of Souls-likes out there, there's no stamina bar, so you're free to keep attacking normally and combo enemies. However, that's not just your main method of attacks, as you also have a spirit gauge, which is this bar right here in the middle of the screen, and essentially it acts like your MP system, where you can use to spend on either spirit attacks, which are your heavy attacks, martial arts, which are your special moves, depending on the weapon you equip, as well as wizardry spells, which is basically magic, as well as also being spent off blocking attacks, dodging, and even encouraging your allies. Though there's a yin and yang to this, though it's more blue and orange than say black and white, as the blue gauge, that's pointing to the right as you can see here, is where you gain spirit, and ideally that's where your spirit bar should be, as doing so will allow you to spend things like combo attacks, as well as deflect enemy attacks. All of it can be filled by doing said attacks, like say, if you deflect enemy attacks and just keep attacking normally doing combos, you can be able to fill depending on the either 2 or 1 additional bars you get. But however, this bar itself does drain over time, or it drains fast whether you either take damage or use it to spend on anything powerful, which again is like an MP bar. And the orange bar on the left itself is where you lose spirit, and that's mainly achieved if you don't have any gain spirit at all, and you do anything else like say taking damage or using spirit or martial or magic even. And if that bar is full and if you get hit, you're left in a vulnerable spot for enemies and bosses to attack you, which really is not ideal. Though with like gaining spirit, that bar does drain over time, though it can be immediately drained fast enough by doing normal combos, or drained immediately when you're doing a deflect, which is essentially this game's mode of parrying, and it's used when you both have the dodge button and thumbstick pressed at the same time to deflect incoming attacks from enemies and bosses. And if you get it right, you get a nice counter attack and a nice ka-chink sound in the mix. But if you get it wrong, well, let's just say you're screwed, and you can deflect more than 1 attack, which is truly essential, especially against enemies and some bosses that will do like either incoming attacks or throw their critical blows, where they will glow red and perform attacks that are truly unblockable. And it's not just that you have spirit gauges, but the enemies and bosses as well, and you can reduce their bars to the point that they have little option to lose spirit, either through deflects or martial arts or spirit attacks. And when said orange bar is full, they leave themselves vulnerable enough for a short period of time, which allows you to perform a fail strike, a devastating move that can either insta-kill enemies or even deal lots of damage against bosses or bigger foes. There's also the morale system, which is this number you see here in the middle, on top of your spirit bar. This generally determines the strength proficiency, as well as the enemies, as you both have a rank and points for this. For example, if your rank is 0 and you come across enemies who are either 1, 2, 3 or 4 ranks above you, they are a little bit stronger than you with their attacks. But if you have a rank over them, you are a much more bigger threat than they are. To gain morale points, you may do so by killing enemies, even doing some good fail strikes, though those points are temporarily. And if you should say take damage from a crit blow or even die, you lose your points and have to start all over, with the max amount you can gain is, well, 25. However, that's where increasing your moral rank comes in, and you have to have like at least a mixed morale stat, and you do so by things like say finding battle flags and marking flags, the latter of which can even restore your HP and your fortitude, increasing them even, as well as also the former being the battle flags that serves as your bonfires, allowing you to rest, regain your HP, as well as items, and also doing things like leveling up with your key, being, well, the EXP system, as well as also having a skill tree where you're able to learn your wizardry skills, your spells even, as well as using points of each element where you can gain by leveling up. Each of them will also cost your spirit from ranging to general magic to either buffs or debuffs. And there's also a mechanic here known as the 5 phases, which essentially has an element counter of their own, especially when you use it doing gameplay. For example, when an enemy will spam lightning barrages around you, to counter that, you can use melee spells, which are essentially just both toxic and poison magic to counter it. Or, if an enemy uses fire, you can counter with water magic. It's a neat mechanic, though sadly, and this is just a me thing, I didn't feel encouraged or engaged enough to use it until I came across a certain flying duel boss who spammed lightning so much he's like bloody Zeus or something. Outside of that, during the end of certain boss fights, and when you make bonds with certain characters, you also get the Divine Beasts, which are basically, well, the summons of this game, with allowing you to equip only one in your arsenal, and each of them represent an element of their own. And when the bar is full, you're able to, well, summon them regularly, and they'll appear on the field for a short period of time, using their elemental effects, some of which can even be able to damage enemies and bosses. There's also Resonation, where it lets you summon the beast, but instead of this time, it allows you to buff the weapon you obtain with an elemental period for a short period of time. And it's a mechanic that I really enjoyed, and some of them can be a bit OP at times. There's also lastly a reinforcements option, where in some stages and missions you have the option to recruit any available party member, up to 2 at the cost of Tiger Seals, which you get through either loot, and should you die, those recruitable party members do disappear, and should they die, you can aid to revive them, otherwise they'll also disappear. And with the cost of spirit, you're able to encourage them to act more aggressive during battle. And as for the general level design, it's fairly solid. While it's fairly linear, something that even in the next game you can tell which has changed to be more open world, there are still at least some alternate pathways and shortcuts that really help exploration being somewhat engaging, especially being able to nearly climb and vault across through areas that are painted white. Well, hey, at least it's not painted yellow like some other games. Or even general roofs and vines and ladders, which is very helpful, especially when there will be enemies that can either ambush you from up top or even afar through things like, say, hidden alleyways or behind rocks, emphasizing that you really have to be alert with your surroundings and try to plan ahead. There's also things like being able to use ranged weapons like, say, crossbows, knives, and bombs, though they have a limited supply. And you also have things like tiptoeing and stealth takedowns with your fail strikes when enemies become aware, at the cost of spirit. And, of course, since this is a Souls-like, it's definitely gonna be hard. A lot. Especially when you face against new types of enemies with their own patterns, and some bosses will likely kick your ass more than once, though it's more or less about trial and error, and about learning their attack patterns, especially using deflect as well your own methods of counterattack. And a lot of these bosses, for the most part, really did put my skills to the test, with standouts being Zhang Liao, Zhang Bao, the final boss, and of course...
It's Lubu!
It's Lubu! It's Lubu! Lubu's come to destroy us!
It's Lubu!
Before me, you have perished!
Lu Bu, the mightiest of all men, being fantastic bosses. Overall, the gameplay, let alone the combat, is really fun. Like, generally fun. But of course, there's always some gripes here. One which is that the lock-on is a little bit clunky, especially during some times where I had to deflect 2 or 3 enemies, especially with the crit blows, and not gonna lie, it's a little bit of a hassle. Another issue I'm not a fan of, and this is a me thing, is just falling off ledges or water, and that puts you at low health, though that part I said is a me thing. And another issue I do have with the combat, while it's very great for the most part, it did lose a little bit of steam, mainly due to the enemy variety being a little bit lackluster, as it just ranges from soldiers to zombies to demon monsters, Ariel the Big Mermaid, Sonic the Hedgehog, and tigers. And a lot of these levels just keep reusing them over and over and over, with some enemies just only having a slightly different behavior than before, and while they did introduce some new enemy types in the late game, as well as some bosses of course being mini bosses later on, which isn't too bad cause that's sort of the norm here, they make some of these enemies in general no longer interesting to fight, with the exception of maybe like say raid generals that randomly appear, though I don't know why they're also colored in red, especially when they use red crit blows. Is it to distinguish them from regular enemies? It just makes them so confusing. The other issue I do have is that while some bosses are challenging, there are some bosses, even after Lu Bu, that just don't feel as aggressive as him, either due to being accustomed to mainly the combat in general or attack patterns in general, or maybe it's not to the best that, well, these bosses can be easily, overlooked by the AI of my party members, as some of them just serve as distractions and just, well, they're likely to draw away the boss from me, so you're able to easily attack them from behind. And while some story missions that are optional, there are some story missions where you're forced to have these party members. And, well, it's not like these party members are competent or anything. Hell, most of them just die in some areas. And lastly, we of course get to my biggest gripe with this game, which I'm pretty sure is the Achilles heel of Team Ninja games. And that is the loot and gear system, as occasionally, when you kill enemies, bosses, and chapters, or even find chests, you get lots of items, equipment, and weapons, each having like a rarity and star rating based on them. And they drop a lot of loot on you. And not gonna lie, despite having some effects, I found this whole gear system very superfluous. And the only thing to note about this gear thing is that some of them can make you very heavy, which will affect your movement speed as well as your spirit. So getting armor that's much more lighter is ideal. But that also makes your chances of having your defense very, very low, to the point that you might as well be vulnerable with a big target on your back. And the dreaded inventory limit returns. So yeah, that is truly something to consider before you play this game. Now when it comes to the music, it's actually pretty good, with lots of having solid tracks here and there throughout the levels, menu theme, and even just having some overall nice battle and boss themes. Sure, some are better than the others, and some do fade in the background a little bit, but overall, I only feel that for only a minority of tracks. But that being said, let's not waste any time, and listen to a couple of songs. Lastly, we get on to the content. Now the main burst of what you do outside of the main story is side missions, even a couple of ones that you also get on the post game, and this allows you to revisit past levels that you already encountered in the main story, and some of them either go in either different pathways or even reverse, and they range from either things like conquering a stage with taking down a mini-boss in the end, or the occasional horde modes, or even just facing down the boss immediately, and this includes even 1v1 bosses against your own party members, and the occasional 2v1s or even 3v1, though the latter one can go f*** it, I mean. You can also even replace story missions, and even do some training, as well as even having like a photo mode, as well as online co-op, though of course I played solo. And of course we have the 3 DLC expansions, each with their own stories, bosses, and side stuff within. When it comes to length, I managed to beat the base game for around 36 hours, including doing all the available side missions as well. I'll definitely touch the DLC at some point, but right now I'm a little burnt. Now, with all that said, what do I think of this game? Well, simply put, I had a real blast with Wo Long Fallen Dynasty, and as someone who plays more of the casual licensed Soulslikes, though doesn't chase the entire genre as many others do, this was actually a nice change of pace, of playing something that is actually out of my comfort zone, but not too much where it becomes stressful. So thanks Koei Tecmo for hitting me up with 2 games that go out of my area of interest, where I'm able to even appreciate new things in life here. But does this beg the question though, is this game a decent gateway for newcomers to get into the Souls genre? Well, mainly the Souls-like genre. Honestly, I would actually say yes. Despite of course being a fairly hard and challenging game, there are a couple of areas where it's more lenient and not too punishing. The combat is very fast and responsive, and with no stamina bar, it helps ease newcomers who normally fear them to jump in. And there's a fair bit of mechanics like the deflecting system, the reinforcements, and capturing the flags to boost morale that does make at least traversal not too much of a slog. Now, while yes, the story itself and some of the cast may leave a lot to be desired, it's still pretty cool to jump into a new twist with the ever so famous War of the Three Kingdoms history, with seeing famous historic figures central to the war, with Koei themselves making them use in their own flagship titles, of course being, Romance and Dynasty Warriors. Side note, the fact that I beat this game and Koei Tecmo decided to reveal a brand new Dynasty Warriors game after so long is crazy. And aside from that, the art direction, the combat, the music, and majority of the bosses, as well as the traversal here, and the general level design are, massive highlights here. So overall, I give Wo Long Fallen Dynasty Complete Edition 3 Lubus out of 5. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and let me know down in the comments if you guys played this game or any Koei Tecmo Team Ninja Souls-like out there, and what do you think of them? With that said, until then, Matt Kaiser out.